Of the Minneapolis Civil Rights Commission will now begin. Good evening, my name is Mackenzie May. I am the chair of the Civil Rights Commission, and I'm going to call this meeting for June 21st, 2021 to order. I want to welcome everyone joining us. As we begin, sorry, can I also ask that if you are not speaking, just to mute your mic for us, please. I will start. I want to welcome everyone for joining us this evening. As we begin, I will note for the record that this meeting has remote participation by members of the community, by members of the commission and city staff as authorized under statutes section 13D.021 due to the declared local public health emergency. The city will be recording and posting this meeting to the city's website and YouTube channel as a means of increasing public access and transparency. This meeting is public and subject to the open meeting law. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll so we can verify a quorum for this meeting.
Is it Commissioner May or Colas?
It is May.
Okay.
Was able to
change it, but for some reason the one I printed has the wrong name. Okay, my apologies.
No worries.
Commissioner Shoemake?
Commissioner Shoemake is not going to be able to make it this evening.
Okay, Commissioner Crowder?
Here.
Devenish?
Present.
Swift?
Here.
Polk? Stignani?
Present.
Davis?
Here.
Fine?
Present.
Gold?
Present.
Rants?
Present.
Witsa? Shepherd?
Here.
Lord?
Here.
Kirkman?
Here.
Hartz?
Here.
B?
Here.
Farrar?
Here.
Kovia?
Here.
Bergquist?
Here.
I have 17 present.
Let the record reflect we have a quorum. Commissioners, the agenda for today's meeting is before us. May I please have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Stignani,
Yes,
so
I
moved.
second that.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Stignani. We have a proper motion before us by Commissioner Stignani, seconded by, who was that?
Commissioner Davis.
Commissioner Davis. Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Is there any
No
discussion? Is there any discussion before the clerk calls the roll?
Yes, Commissioner May, this is Cindy Devenish, Commissioner Devenish. I was wondering for number 6, if we could just talk about the Stop the Gun Violence Proclamation. And yeah, just talk about the proclamation and not necessarily about the task force, because it's kind of proclamation has the task force embedded in it.
Yeah, I see no problems with that. Are you referring to the label of the document?
Yes, it's number 6. We could just talk about the proclamation, which talks about the task force. So it's really the same thing. So I just want to put that out there.
Okay. Anything else from the commission for the agenda? With seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Commissioner May?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowder?
Yeah.
Commissioner Devenish?
Yes.
Swift?
Yes.
Stignani?
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Fine,
Yes.
Gold,
Yes.
Rance,
Yes.
Shepherd,
Yes.
Lord,
Yes.
Berkman,
Yes.
Harts,
Yes.
Fee,
Yes.
Farrar,
Yes.
Covia,
Yes.
Bergquist.
Yes.
You have 17 ayes.
Passes and the agenda is adopted. Next is the acceptance of minutes from the May 17th meeting. May I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a proper motion before us. Is there any discussion before the clerk calls the roll? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Commissioner May,
Yes.
Crowder,
Yes.
Devenish,
Yes.
Swift,
Yes.
Stignani,
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Fine,
Yes.
Gold,
Yes.
Rance,
Yes.
Shepherd,
Abstain.
Lord,
Yes.
Berkman,
Yes.
Harts,
Yes.
Fee,
Abstain.
Farrar,
Yes.
Covia,
Yes.
Bergquist. You have 17 ayes.
Thank you. That motion passes and the minutes are accepted as presented. Item 4 on the agenda is a presentation on qualified immunity completed in 2021 by the American Civil Liberties Union, which will be given by Julia Decker. I will now invite Ms. Decker to give that presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Commissioner. I'm going to try to share my screen here, so hopefully this works. I believe everybody received a copy of the presentation. But if not, okay. Can somebody confirm for me that they can see the screen?
Yes, thank you, Julia. I can see
Okay.
it.
Wonderful. Thank you.
It isn't presentation mode, but I can see it fine. I'm not sure if others will have troubles.
How about now?
Let's see. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Apologies for the technical difficulties. Well, thank you again to everybody for being here tonight, and thank you to the Commission for hosting this discussion. My name is Julia Decker. I am the Policy Director for the American Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU of Minnesota. We are the Minnesota affiliate of the National ACLU. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and we work in the courts, in the state legislature, and city councils, and in the community to promote and defend civil liberties here in Minnesota. So I'm here tonight to talk to you about qualified immunity, which is a very big topic. You may have heard it being thrown around in the media and the news in the arena of policing and public safety right now. And understanding what it is and isn't, what can be done about it, what changes are going on, it can be kind of a maze. So my job tonight is to break this topic down for you and try and explain it. I am also a lawyer, but I don't have litigation expertise in qualified immunity. So I just want to sort of put out there, full disclosure, if there are lawyers here who want to sort of dig further into the weeds on, qualified immunity case law, I am maybe fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, not your main person for that. So a quick roadmap, we'll talk about what qualified immunity is and what it isn't. We'll talk about why it's a problem and some approaches that are being done in other states and localities, and then end with links to additional resources and maybe some time for question and answer, depending on what time we have left over. So what is qualified immunity? So qualified immunity is not a statute or a law in the way that we often think about it. It wasn't, created by Congress or a state legislature. This is sort of a rule that was created by federal courts. And it limits when a government official, such as a police officer, can be held civilly liable for violating a person's rights. So in essence, it limits the ability for somebody to sue a government official. Now, to be clear, we're talking about civil liability, not criminal liability. So we're not talking about, for instance, Derek Chauvin's charges and ultimately conviction for murder and the death of George Floyd. We're talking about a civil case that happens separately, independently, apart from that, and is not about jail time, but is about damages, often in the form of money. So this limits liability. Why would courts want to limit civil lawsuits against government officials such as police officers? We've seen many examples that government officials such as police officers can act badly, can violate people's rights. So the reasons for limiting these lawsuits are laid out in much more detail in case law, but they sort of come down to a couple overarching principles. First, courts have said we don't want to hamper the government's ability to do their jobs, to reasonably do their duties, such as law enforcement. So in other words, we don't want police officers during a split-second decision to be second-guessing themselves because of the fear of a lawsuit. We don't want to punish good faith efforts by government officials to do their jobs. We want government officials to be on notice of what they can and can't do. And second, courts have said we don't want to unduly burden government with things like excessive litigation costs that can come with a lot of lawsuits. And we don't want to discourage people from going into public service because of a potential threat of maybe being sued. So maybe, you're hearing that, you're thinking, okay, well, this seems principally pretty reasonable, right? Or this sort of makes sense from a common sense perspective. There has to be some margin of error, right? And reasonableness should be part of this equation. So what's the problem? The problem is that the way that qualified immunity has been interpreted over time by the courts, this doctrine, this idea, it's been made into something that really operates as virtually a complete shield to liability for government officials, including police officers. And it really, in a way, prevents the examination of whether conduct can even be looked at for whether it's unlawful or unconstitutional. How does it do this? So this is where we get into some of the sort of lawyer talk. And so I'm going to really try to explain this in a way that is not lawyer speak. One of the biggest barriers to getting around qualified immunity is this, what's called the clearly established concept, clearly established interpretation, sort of whatever we want to call it. And in the next slide, I'll present some examples of this. But basically, this concept says that unless a right was quote unquote clearly established in a previous case, then no matter what happened in a present case, no matter how bad the conduct was, no matter how badly a government official might have harmed a person, unless it was clearly established that a right was violated, there's no liability. Qualified immunity kicks in and prevents there from being any liability. In practice, this has come down to interpretations of really minute details, really small details, such as whether a person was sitting down and surrendering versus lying down and surrendering. And again, I'll go into that example a little bit more in the next slide. And this is also a pretty extreme interpretation of the idea of notice. I mentioned that notice, government officials needs to know what they can and can't do. But this is pretty extreme because, the principle of having notice isn't inherently wrong. But there are things that really probably should be considered. They're so egregious that they should at least be considered as to whether they're violations of rights, even if a previous case didn't deal with it before. And that gets to the second barrier, which is sort of this pretrial cutoff that often happens with qualified immunity. Qualified immunity kicks in before a lot of extensive trial stuff. And I apologize to the litigators. There's obviously lots of complex and complicated stuff that goes into trial, and I'm sort of condensing that down into stuff. But courts have said we don't want to burden governments with all of these excessive litigation costs, right? So the way this has worked out is that a court will get a case where maybe a police officer is alleged to have violated a person's rights. Instead of looking at whether, in fact, there may have been a violation, they first go to that clearly established examination. And if they can't find a previous case where this right that is alleged to have been violated in the current case was ever clearly established, then qualified immunity applies and nothing else happens in that case. It just gets cut off right then and there. Third sort of procedural piece that I won't spend too much time on, but I did link to an article in Forbes about is whether a previous case was in fact published or not. And for those of you who are attorneys, you know the difference there. A published case, has binding precedential value, whereas an unpublished case just sort of sits out there and maybe you can cite it in a footnote or something, but it doesn't generally have any precedential value. And in qualified immunity sort of jurisprudence, it's the same way. If it's an unpublished court opinion, at least one court has found that that's not enough to show that a right was clearly established.
Julia, I'm really sorry to interrupt you. I'm not seeing your slides advancing. Are other folks having that issue?
The slide that I am seeing is what's the problem?
Oh, then maybe that's on my end, so don't worry about it.
Okay, and is it showing the examples?
It's not advancing for me either. This is Commissioner Berquist.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Stignani, not from either.
Does everybody have a copy of it in the agenda? With the agenda materials, there should be a copy of the presentation as well.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I will continue with the slides for those who are able to see it, and then for those who don't, we can hopefully follow along with the attachment. So I hopefully explained those concepts of clearly established and sort of the pretrial cutoff in a understandable sort of non-legalese way. But to flesh it out even more, I wanted to present a few examples of how this has actually played out. And the first example is a case of a person named Andrew Scott. And the link goes to actually a Cato Institute write-up of this case. Basically, it's the police showed up erroneously at his house. It's the wrong house. There was no warrant, no identification, no announcement that it was police. And when Mr. Scott answered the door, the police shot and killed him. And this seems pretty egregious, right? I mean, this seems like there should at least maybe be a trial about like whether there was a violation of rights. But in this case, the courts held that qualified immunity prevented a lawsuit against the police from going forward because the police, there was not a clearly established right from previous case law that the police were alleged to have violated. The second example is a situation that I've linked to another write-up about this case, Baxter versus Bracy, where, as I sort of referenced earlier, it really came down to a distinction. So it was about when the police can use a police dog on a person who is surrendering. And it essentially came down to whether surrendering by sitting down and raising one's hands up over their head was close enough to surrendering by lying down. And the reason is because in a previous case, courts had found that person surrendering by lying down and then the police use a police dog on them, that is a clearly established right. The person's rights were clearly established, and that was a right that was violated when the person surrendered by lying down and then had a police dog used on them. In this case, the person surrendered by sitting down and raising their hands over their head, and a police dog was used. And the court said, no, there's a distinction here because of the way the person was surrendering. So it's not a clearly established right. Qualified immunity kicks in. and there's no liability. Third is a case, McCoy versus Alamu, which deals with corrections officers. Now, my understanding of this case is that it actually did get sent back from the Supreme Court in February. So there is the potential for some, maybe a different outcome in the end on this case. But in the initial case, what happened, and you can see in the quote from the Institute for Justice attorney here, there was really, again, sort of a very small factual distinction between how the inmate in this particular case was harmed versus how inmates in previous cases had been harmed. And that would determine whether qualified immunity shielded the officials who had caused the harm. So these examples, I think, really demonstrate kind of how out of whack this qualified immunity concept has become. Because while the reasoning for qualified immunity may have had some merit, the way it's been interpreted over time, the Cato Institute actually in one of their write-ups points out, and they have this really interesting quote, I think they say, quote, "The more outrageous an officer's actions, the less likely it will be that anyone else has behaved similarly, and the harder it will be to find a case on point." Okay, so maybe you agree with me that qualified immunity is a problem, maybe not, but let's say that qualified, we really want to try and do something about this. What can we do about it? Well, there's a lot of changes afoot in this area. We've actually seen a couple states now, Colorado and New Mexico, both have taken state approaches to this. New York City actually took a very local approach to it. I believe there may be also a congressional push on this issue, but I do state legislative work, so I'm not as familiar with the federal landscape. In broad strokes, what you see at the state and local levels is we call it qualified immunity reform. What it really is more of a creation of an alternative path to accountability. It seeks to essentially avoid qualified immunity altogether. And so what this does is, if you'll recall, qualified immunity was created by federal courts, not state courts. And without getting into a treatise about the entire American legal system, we've got the federal court system, which is one thing, but you've got the state courts systems, which are another. And the pathway in the federal courts to accountability has been constrained by qualified immunity for now, is constrained by qualified immunity for now. But there is still this opening to create a pathway in state courts. Now, there are alternative ways to do this. Basically, both in Colorado, New Mexico, and New York City, what you've got is some version of creating a cause of action. So basically saying, okay, you can sue for this, a rights violation. And in some places, it might be you can sue a peace officer. In other places, it might be you can sue a public body, such as the government body. In some places, it's you can sue the peace officers and their departments. But all are variations of using the state court system and creating the ability to go into state court and actually bring a lawsuit against a public official, a government official, or a government department that you are alleging violated your rights. There's lots of other issues that once you get into the weeds of this, who are you holding liable for which violations, arbitration, attorney's fees, all these much thornier issues, but the broad approach is sort of starting to shake out in these different ways. The Institute for Justice model is also a bill that we have actually collaborated with the Institute for Justice on. They came up with the model bill language, and it is a similar, I would say most similar probably to the New Mexico bill, in that it aims at holding government bodies, sort of public bodies, as the liable body for violations of rights under sort of an employer-employee liability model. So different approaches. The overarching idea is, using the state courts to get real accountability for rights violations. The current system is failing, has failed. Qualified immunity change really gets at one of these systems that has really driven some of that failure. It won't change everything. It won't magically make everything in policing and public safety better. but it will move the system as a whole toward more accountability for violations of rights. And I think it's really important to know that this is an issue that draws support from both the left and the right, from Democrats and Republicans, as you'll see from the list of resources that we have, the write-ups about qualified immunity that come from a variety of sources that are available and linked here. So with that, this is my contact information is included at the end, and I just want to thank you again for your time, thank the commission, and if there is time for questions, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, if there are questions that can be sent to the commission and can be forwarded on to me, I'm also happy to handle those afterward.
Thank you, Ms. Decker. I do wonder if you could put your contact information in the chat. The slide wasn't showing, but I think if you want to put that in the chat. And then, yeah, we can take questions from the commissioners. Mark, do you have a question? Or Commissioner Signani, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Julia, thank you so much for coming to speak with us here. Can you cover kind of what's happening legislatively in either Minneapolis or Minnesota proper?
Sure. So there was a bill that was introduced in the state legislature this past session that sort of was an initial step towards some sort of changes around qualified immunity. It wasn't fully comprehensive, but it did at least start the discussion. It was not included in any of the omnibus bills that are now being discussed in the current special session. So it's unlikely there won't be any, legislative movement on it this session. But, it continues to be a priority, certainly for ACLU of Minnesota, and I think for many other groups as well at the legislature. So we'll certainly continue those discussions.
Thank you. And where else, who might be the people in charge or the people who are either most for or most against this in the state legislature that we might want to reach out to?
Sure. So the organizations that I can definitely say are interested in the issue right now, our Institute for Justice, Americans for Prosperity, and then us, of course. I know Representative Thompson, I believe, was the one who introduced the bill this session. And, I think the House DFL caucus in general has been interested, of course, in in issues around policing and public safety. But again, I think this is an issue that goes beyond that and really does have a lot of bipartisan interest. And so, as those discussions continue, I think that it will hopefully generate additional interest in both chambers on both sides of the aisle.
Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? Well, thank you, Julia. The contact information is in the agenda, in the presentation, as well as in the chat if you are on Microsoft Teams. Seeing no further questions, I will direct the clerk to receive and file that report. Okay. Item 5 on the agenda is a report on the African American Family Preservation Act, which will be given by Commissioners Hartz, Rance, and Devenish. I will now invite them to give that report.
Thank you, Commissioner May. Just to give the commission a little back track of why we're talking about the African American Family Preservation Act, Commissioner Hertz and Rance and I have been meeting and completed a document to have voted on today that has been sent ahead and it's included in the agenda. So hopefully everyone got to review it. And just to recap is just Minnesota's African American youth are removed from homes at an alarming rate, and large numbers are crossing over from child protection into the juvenile justice system. Racial disparities are found in the entire processes from initial reporting, screening, and assessment to discharge from the system. Healthy families are vital to the success of our children and ultimately our state. So I just want to recap on the importance of why we're voting for this African American Family Preservation Act. And this would be sent to our legislature, basically saying that we support it. Commissioner Rance and Commissioner Hartz, do you have anything to add on, gentlemen?
This is Commissioner Rance. I also had a conversation with Ms. Ellison with the Minneapolis Public Schools, and made her aware that we were considering drafting a letter, and she said that she'd be interested in taking a look at it as well, and having an opportunity for the MCCR to present at Minneapolis School Board as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Rance. Commissioner Hartz, do you have anything to add, sir?
I do not, Commissioner Devenish. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. So if we could move to vote on the document that's already been added to the agenda, please.
I second that.
Thank you.
David Farrar has a question. He has his hand up. Commissioner Farrar, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I wondered, did we get a copy of the digital presentation that was made to the Commission? Are we able to retrieve that from somewhere and look at that digitally? Was it recorded?
Well, sir, I'm not sure about the recording. However, there was a email that Ms. Khalees Houston provided. So that was sent out to the Commission because Ms. Houston, who is a community partner in writing this and executive director of Village Arms, she might be one of the callers on the line who sent the PowerPoint out. So hopefully that answers your question, Commissioner Farrar.
Was that PowerPoint sent to us, all commissioners, by her? Should I be able to see an email from her?
It was sent from the department. I sent it to whoever was that liaison at the time, and then it was sent to the Commission. If you're needing it, I can ask Ms. Houston to send it out again.
Yeah, I have looked online on the department's LIMS system, and I could not see it there. So if you could send it again, I would appreciate having a copy.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Is there any more questions? I see other people have their hand up. Commissioner Shepard.
Thank you, Commissioner Devenish. And thank you, commissioners, for your work on this letter. I appreciate your attention to these important issues. I just have a few comments about this legislation. As a point of reference, I prosecute child abuse cases at the county level. While I am by no means an expert in this area, I do have some familiarity. So on a high level, this legislation seeks to accomplish very important objectives. I think the Oversight Committee and cultural sensitivity training is extremely important. However, after consulting with other professionals in the field, including judges and child protection attorneys, I have concerns regarding other implications of this legislation. When you have separate standards for individuals based on race, the courts apply a strict scrutiny analysis when determining if there is an equal protection clause violation. So for instance, in this legislation, the appeal period for parents of color is proposed to be 6 months, I believe, while for white parents it is 21 days. In order to survive a strict scrutiny analysis. The state must show that this is necessary in order to achieve a compelling state interest, and it is narrowly tailored to achieve the compelling interest in the least restrictive means. So in this case, both parents would be represented by attorneys who would do the litigation for them. So there's no basis to differentiate an appeal period based on race. And that's one example from the legislation. And I know you might be wondering how ICWA has survived Equal Protection Clause challenges, as I know commissioners have assimilated this legislation to ICWA. The difference is the courts recognize Indian American as a political status and not a race-based classification. So these statutes only need to survive rational basis scrutiny and not strict scrutiny. I know this is very legalese, but I just wanted to provide an explanation as to my concerns for this legislation. There are a lot of great things about this legislation, which in isolation are super important and necessary, such as the oversight commission, such as training. However, as a whole, as it is currently written, I do not support this legislation. I do thank the commissioners for their hard work on that. I just want to provide an explanation as to my reservations. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing all that information. I do greatly appreciate it. Ms. Khalees Houston, are you there?
Yes, I'm on the line.
Okay, this is Ms. Khalees Houston. She was our guest previously. Could you please respond to that comment?
Yes, absolutely. We've had this conversation before. This is about the third year that we've introduced this bill. We are aware that some people have reservations because they believe it's race-based, but it's really a form of a reparations bill to restore the harm that this system has caused to Black families specifically. So we have to focus for a time on Black families specifically. Both of the legislative authors, excuse me, Champion and Agbaje, are also attorneys. So we're preparing for that argument once the bill is passed.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from the commissioners? I think Commissioner Colbia has his hand raised.
Thanks. You know, I'm an attorney, and I see what Commissioner Shepard is mentioning. I'm just wondering what the actual arguments were. Sorry, not Commissioner Shepard, but if our guest could speak on what some of those arguments were against that point, that would help me a lot.
Yeah, because the bill hasn't passed yet, the arguments haven't been presented, but the concern has been raised by some people that oppose the bill. And so we're just preparing for that. But the bill hasn't passed yet, so I can't speak to who would actually argue against this bill in light of the disparities that have existed for Black families for some time within child protection. The council alone would not address that, nor would culturally sensitive training, because, I mean, our providers have been getting that for some time now, and it doesn't work to address disparities. We're working to create a standard to ensure that racial bias isn't leading in the decision making as it has to continue to perpetuate these disparities. But no, the bill hasn't passed yet, but we've had conversations with lots of decision makers and officials, and so we're just preparing in case that argument comes up. And there will be a statement written to explain why this bill needs to focus on African American families specifically.
Commissioner Rance, could you speak a little bit about your viewpoint of the importance of the African American Family Preservation Act? And I do see Commissioner Stignati also has his hand raised.
And Cindy, before we do that, can I just provide some context on the issue?
Yes,
so that folks understand what our families are actually experiencing in this system. We're coming into child protection with less egregious allegations than our white counterparts, but our children are 3 to 5 times more likely to be removed, and up to 5 times more likely our parents are to have their parental rights terminated. And not only at that time are the parental rights terminated, but the familial relationships with the extended families are severed as well. So the grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins are actually cut off from the children as well. And this is a long-standing national issue, well documented. There's plenty of research and data to show what's been occurring. Once our children are placed in foster care, they languish there. And they're the highest population moving from child protection to juvenile detention. So this bill is written in such a way that it would address those disparities at every point of contact with the child protection system until we see a reduction in the number of our children removed, the number of our parents experiencing parental rights termination, and the number of our children aging out of care without permanency, meaning they are never reunified with their family and never adopted.
Yeah, you absolutely convinced me last time that this type of change needs to occur. I just don't want to support something that might end up being deemed unconstitutional and then have to go through the entire process to get it voted on again. So I was just wondering if you had a specific answer to Commissioner Shepard's question about the constitutionality of this order. Because again, I support everything you're doing, but if it's going to be deemed unconstitutional, then I could see that being, sort of one step forward, two steps back.
So I'm not an attorney, but based on the conversations that we've had so far, what we're going to do is outline the disparities and how it's impacted this population unfairly and unjustly. We're going to outline and highlight the inequity in the decision-making process and use that. But again, I'm not an attorney, so I can't say specifically what the argument is going to be because it's going to have to come from one of the attorneys.
Thank you, Ms. Houston. I see Mark Stignati has his hand raised.
Thank you, Commissioner Devenish. You're kind of going down the road I was looking for, so I'm just looking for how disparate the treatments are of African American families versus is there another way to adjust the statistically bad treatment that they're getting? Has that been looked at or talked about? Are there any statistics we should know about?
This is
Go ahead.
No, this is Commissioner Rance. I'm just going to say that, two of the main things that I saw that this legislation would do is to raise a higher level of standard for out of home placement, and that there'd be more of a concerted effort to try to remedy any situations before a child goes into the system and potentially loses their relationship with their parents, and also too through human services modifying some of their existing practices that are going to address some of these claims. When we take a look, and it's saying that 80% of the mandatory reporters are filing these claims, and the far majority of them are white, then we do and should take a look at how institutional racism may come into play, in addition to the fact that some of these claims that may be made may not necessarily be deemed as neglectful when it comes to either sexual or physical abuse. I think the fact that we're looking at disparities, and you can see that there's a higher proportion of Black children that are being placed in the foster care system, and parents losing their parental rights in relation to the numbers that they have here in the state and the city of Minneapolis. I mean, I think that that's something that definitely needs to be addressed. And I think this bill is heading in the right direction in regards to working to rectify that.
Thank you, Commissioner Rance. I see some hands go up and then go down. Does anybody else want to speak? Have any other questions they would like to address?
This is Commissioner Hartz. I wanted to speak to Commissioner Shepard and Commissioner Covia's questions about strict scrutiny, but actually I think that Commissioner Rance just said just about everything I was going to as well. So I would take, for those of you with strict scrutiny questions, for the lawyers in the crowd, I would take what Commissioner Rance said and think about the compelling government interest at play there, and also think about, you know, is there a way to tailor the law as narrowly as possible to address those? I think it's difficult to get more narrow than it already is. So that's why I'll be supporting it, and that's why I offered to help Commissioner Devenish with it in the first place.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartz. And I seen Commissioner Gold's hand up. Commissioner Gold, did you have something you would like to add?
Hi, yeah, I guess I was curious how this bill would be deemed unconstitutional or could be seen as unconstitutional. And I think, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, it sounded like you had a second part to your question. I'll wait.
No, I mean, that was it for now. I have something else, but that was the first question.
Yeah, so this is Commissioner Hartz again. The Constitution has different ways that the courts interpreting the Constitution have different levels of scrutiny that they apply to laws that discriminate between people. And what I mean by discriminate is treat people differently based on their race. So, for example, a law that gives one standard to Black families and a different standard to families that aren't Black would be considered, discriminating. So, what they mean when they are looking at laws that discriminate, and again, this can be based on gender. This could be based on where your business is located. There are rules that discriminate between people in all different ways. If there are laws that discriminate between people on the basis of their race, there's this special level of scrutiny, the highest level of scrutiny that the court applies, called strict scrutiny. And basically what that means is that if you have a law that treats people differently based on your race, and keep in mind, like Jim Crow and segregation, when you're thinking of this standard, if your law treats people differently based on race, it has to be because there is a really, really compelling reason that benefits the public and the government, and the law has to be as absolutely narrowly written as possible to try to address that issue, so that there aren't tons of laws treating people differently based on their race. That's basically what the courts have said about it in the past, and that's been the dominating perspective in the American legal system about laws that treat people differently based on race for, I don't know how old strict scrutiny is, like 75 years or something like that. So hopefully that answers your question and wasn't too legally filled.
Commissioner Farrar has his hand raised. I'm sorry, Commissioner Gold, do you have any other questions?
Not so much. I'm not a lawyer, but I do respect, Commissioner Shepard's point of view. But I also, I feel like the research, the data is there, and the systemic racism is there. And not only that, but this is also legislation brought to us by, a woman of color of our commission, and also Miss Houston. So I feel like they have a lived experience, and I am definitely in support of it. I guess I just wanted to say that, so because we are pretty white, we are diverse, but we're a pretty white body, and I just want to be mindful of folks who are bringing legislation, for us to discuss, that are actually living this and have experienced it, whereas maybe we haven't. So thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Gold.
Commissioner Farrar has his hand up.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Devenish. The the comment I have, and maybe Ms. Houston could address this, is that I worry about the practicality as well as the constitutionality of what's being proposed. And what I was going back to try and look at when I couldn't find the presentation originally is that there's no doubt that there are disparate outcomes occurring and these African American families are worse off as a result. Everyone agrees with that. And then there was also raised during the presentation, is this because somehow African American families treat their children worse and therefore that's why they get different outcomes? And clearly that wasn't the case either, and they went through that. But one thing that I thought might underlie what we're seeing is that people who have access to fewer resources are able to afford fewer lawyers and fewer people to represent them and are less able to articulate their case. Or like poor people in general come out with worse outcomes because they're not able to present themselves better. And in this case, I wondered if the socio-economic circumstances of the African American people who have worse outcomes might also be partly explained because they have less money and less economic resources to be able to get a better outcome through the system. And the reason I bring that up is that it seems if the underlying problem is that people have fewer access to resources, then the solution is to give people better access to resources, not to provide different standards for people according to race. And I don't know how to explain that well, but it seems like we might be tackling the wrong problem and eventually making things worse, rather than tackling the underlying problem, which is people should have better resources and be given a better opportunity to present their cases.
Thank you. Ms. Houston, are you still there?
Yep, I am here, and that could be a part of it, but it isn't the underlying issue, nor would it solve the disparate treatment, because racial bias in practice is the main cause of the disparate treatment that we see. We have wealthy families, actually one on my list right now with a Black mother and white father who can both afford private attorneys, and mom is still getting the short end of the stick. So that's not the underlying cause. Our families, because some of them are, well, a lot of them are living below the poverty line, are working with different systems. So they're under the scrutiny of more mandated reporters. And we have data that shows our hospitals and clinics, as well as our schools, are disproportionately reporting African-American families to child protection. So I wish that were it were that simple, but no, it's not. We need a change in practice and some accountability for our decision makers. And that's what this bill does.
This is Commissioner Hartz. You know, there's also ways, and I don't know if this has been done already, but you can control for stuff like income and socioeconomic status. And, you know, it's I think, possible and likely. I mean, again, I don't know if these studies have been done or not, but it would not surprise me at all if even controlling for those things, there was disparate treatment for Black families. Again, I'm totally ignorant about whether those studies have been done or not, but there is a way to answer that question, Commissioner Farrar, I think, to your satisfaction.
I would just like to add something, if that's okay. The reason why this African American Family Preservation Act is so important is the numbers don't lie. I think a lot of lawyers on this commission go by numbers, go by data, go by information. The fact is that African American children are twice as much likely to be removed from homes. When you talk about the Constitution, and I'm not a lawyer, but doesn't that seem against the Constitution when you're talking about treating people equally, when you're talking about treating people fairly? So that's why we wrote this, is to build an even playing field. Because right now, what's happening is that 60% of cases involving African American children are assigned to family investigation path. So that's why, that's just part of the reason of why Ms. Houston is here. and why Commissioner Hartz and Commissioner Rance and I came together and wrote this letter. And we actually talked to Hennepin County staff who gave money supporting this and put initiatives into the county, and we're in Hennepin County. So I just want to say that the numbers don't lie, and
they don't.
And that's the main point of this conversation of why we wrote this letter and why we are pushing for this. I know that this is not an unconstitutional, issue. However, it's an important issue, and the racial disparities speak for themselves in the numbers. And that's what I think we should focus on. And the children impacted and the families impacted just because of the color of their skin, which is what this is about. And I think as civil rights commissioners, we have a duty to pass this and support the African American Preservation Act, or to me, we're being hypocritical of everything that we're working for.
I agree.
And Cindy, can I add? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm on my phone, so I can't see when people have their hand raised. Or...
No problem, ma'am. This is Commissioner Rance. I was just agreeing with Commissioner Devenish on that. And when you take a look at the, some of the overviews of the bill, it's to ensure that African Americans have that the human services for the state has culturally competent training, for individuals that work in child protection, including child welfare workers, supervisors, attorneys, juvenile court judges, and family judges. The commissioner would also appoint a council to formulate policies and procedures relating to African American children welfare services, and to ensure that African American families are provided all possible services and opportunities to care for their children in homes. The office shall be appointed by a director, and that they will have resources for it. And the commissioner shall establish direct grants to African American led organizations, service providers, and programs that serve African American children and their families to provide primary support for African American children welfare programs to implement this act. And the last point I want to make is that it's also talking about the training of the people that work and file these cases and work within this system. So I don't see how that can be unconstitutional. Because if we were truly talking about the 14th Amendment and equal protection under the law, then we wouldn't be having this discussion. But as we can see, that us being in the epicenter of our nation's disparities, that there's a problem here with Black children and Black families going into this system and literally being ripped apart. And so I view this bill as a way to develop a higher standard for the protection of that, for it to be a cost savings to us as taxpayers, and for it to be overall beneficial for society as a whole.
Thank you, Commissioner Rance. And I see Commissioner Lord, I see your hand is up. Commissioner Lord, you're on mute.
Oh, thank you. I guess I just wanted to say that I started in, going back to the initial presentation made, a little bit skeptical about this because of some of the concerns about the unconstitutionality and just the differences being solely on race, and kind of was like, gosh, why wouldn't we just extend all of these same services, if you will, to all families? But I think, after hearing a lot of the discussion, I'm really coming out on the side of supporting this because the numbers don't lie, and the reality is that we need a offset that has action and has teeth to what clearly is racism in the kind of identification and evaluation of African American families. And we need to have some offsets. We need to have some actions pushing on the other side to offset that. And so I guess, starting from a place of more skepticism, that's what has been persuasive to me. And, I plan on supporting this because I think we need to be having those more active offsets with tangible activities and tangible stuff. So that's all I had to say. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lord. And I want to be sensitive of people's time. We're at 7:04. Can we call this into vote?
Yeah, do you want to recall your motion from earlier?
Oh, yes. This is Commissioner Devenish. I don't know. What is the word? Commissioner Rance, could you help me? I'm sorry.
Cindy, Commissioner Devenish, I'm sorry. Before you vote, can I just add one thing to maybe help folks that have some concern or reservations about the bill?
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
But the counties that this bill works to hold accountable, specifically Hennepin and Ramsey, but there are others support this bill. I have the support of their Board of Commissioners, officials and directors. And we're currently piloting the bill in Hennepin County with my agency. And I worked this year with the Department of Human Services on the language with their technical assistance team so that we can get to a place of agreement on the language so that we can push for the passage of the bill during next session together. So they're aware of what's happening in their departments and welcome this legislation to change it.
Thank you, Ms. Houston, and thank you for taking the time to answer our commissioners' questions. It's always a pleasure to have you. Mark, I see your hand is raised. I mean, Commissioner Stenati. Okay, I see your hand went down, so if we could call this into vote. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. Sorry, I was talking to myself. So Commissioner Shepard just shared some statistics. Commissioner Shepard, could you give us some color on how those were generated and help us understand where the right graphics are in that document?
Yes, this is Commissioner Shepard. I just wanted to share the Department of Human Services did a legislative report. This was done in October 2020, and it deals with out-of-home placement care and permanency, and it shows by race. And if I'm just scrolling quickly to find where I found to be very helpful.
Page 19.
Yes, I believe, and further on as well is very informative. I also found page 20, sorry, one more. Page 25 to be insightful as well.
And if I can add, when reviewing DHS's data, if you're looking for African-American children in that data, consider both the African-American category as well as the 2 or more races category. Over 50% of the children in the 2 or more races category have at least one Black parent. So that differentiation actually skews the numbers as it relates to how many of our families are involved and how many of our children are in care.
Okay, so can we vote? Can I call this to a vote?
Please do, Commissioner Rance.
All right, so this is Commissioner Rance. Can we vote on the acceptance of this Family Preservation Act letter?
Do we have a second?
This is
I second.
I second.
Okay, thank you. We have a proper motion before us by Commissioner Rance and seconded by Commissioner Hartz. We'll have the clerk call the roll.
Commissioner May,
Yes, absolutely.
Commissioner Crowder,
Yes.
Commissioner Devenish,
Yes.
Swift,
Yes.
Volk,
Yes.
Stignani,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Fine,
Yes.
Gold,
Yes.
Rance,
Yes.
Shepherd,
No.
Lord,
Yes.
Kirkman,
Yes.
I didn't hear you.
Yes.
Was that a yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hartz,
Yes.
Fee,
Yes.
Farrar,
No.
Hobia,
Yes.
Bergquist,
Yes.
we have 16 yeses.
Thank you. That motion passes. And that letter, we pass the adoption of it. And let's see. Thank you for that presentation and update on that. And then the next item on the agenda is a report from the on the Stop the Violence Proclamation, which will be given by Commissioner Devenish.
Yes. Thank you.
That update. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to be sensitive of our time. In the agenda, there was a proclamation for gun violence. Commissioner Gold. Well, let me just back up and say thank you to Commissioner Hartz, Commissioner Rance, Commissioner Herkman, and some other commissioners who helped put together this proclamation. Has been changed in legalese a few times. The most recent update is in the agenda under proclamation, and we removed the children's names because we needed permission to use the children's names from the families. And they're still grieving, so I didn't feel appropriate to, reach out to them and talk to them up at this time. So we removed their names. This is important because our community is being plagued with gun violence at an alarming rate. And what's scary to me is that we're only in June. And I think we should have a gun accountability task force. We could work with other departments to help. For example, at Juneteenth, we had a Mother's Love. We could use them and a gun accountability task force, and asking for a gun violence month, which was brought to me by Commissioner Herkman. So hopefully y'all read this. Is there any discussion at this time? No? Okay. Well, with that being said, 7:12, I would like to call this into vote. And Commissioner Gold, could you help me call this into vote, please?
Yeah, I second that.
Well, we got to think of the fancy words.
Oh, the statement would benefit some proofreading. That was Amy. You mean like editing?
No, like calling this into.
No, I'm sorry. I'm asking Commissioner
Oh,
Berquist.
I'm sorry. I didn't read
This
the
is
comments.
Commissioner Berquist. They're just like really minor things that don't change the substance, but like the third paragraph, I assume it's the second sentence should be Americans are 25 times more likely, and then like the first sentence in the fourth paragraph should be under the Second Amendment. So just like minor things, it seems like at the end of the fourth paragraph, the sentence repeats itself. Minnesota has the 21st highest rate of gun deaths in the USA. Minnesota has the 21st highest rates of gun. Like they're just like some really minor things, and I don't know what the best way is to move forward on this in an expeditious way. But it's just like seems like there are some really minor tweaks that we could change to clean it up a little bit.
Thank you, Commissioner Berquist. Commissioner Chair May, is there any way you could edit it on live screen and share your screen with Commissioner Berquist's recommendations? Because we did that before when Ms. Berquist had her human rights discussion. We did a live edit. So if we could treat this as the same and do a live edit as well.
Otherwise, in the past, we have also accepted it with those, like, the amended changes, especially if they are just minor changes.
Okay.
We have done that in the past, so if people are okay with that.
Okay.
I'm fine with doing that, actually. So we can vote on that if you'd like.
Okay, that's fine, I agree.
But if you want to tell me what needs to be, updated, I can do that.
Commissioner Berquist, could you tell Chair May the edits that you would like to make, please, ma'am?
Sure, and I just took a quick glance. So third paragraph, the second sentence, Americans are 25 times more likely. So just adding the word times.
That's what I see, actually.
Okay. Then this is just the one that was attached to my email. So maybe there have been changes since then. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there might have. Well, if you want to email me, we can discuss if it's like
I think that would be more of a more efficient use of our time if we agree on the content. If it's a matter of cross T's, dotted I's, commas, etc. Let's vote on it, and then maybe you and Commissioner Berkowitz can get together with those finer details, and we can move forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
So Commissioner Devenish, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, did you want to make a motion to vote on the proclamation with the edits to be happening after?
Well,
I hear someone talking. Go
yeah,
ahead.
Commissioner Stignani here. Kayla has kindly shared the most current version. If we could all click on that link, and so that version seems to have some of those items that Commissioner Berquist has called out corrected.
Thank you, because there has been a few emails and some communication issues. So I appreciate you sending that. Thank you so much.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second on the motion to adopt the gun violence proclamation, stop the gun violence proclamation with the amended potential changes?
I'll second.
I second it. Thank you. And can we have the clerk call the roll? Thank you, Diana.
Commissioner May?
I see a hand, actually.
Yeah,
Who seconded that?
I'm sorry.
I did, Commissioner Folk.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Kayla did put a great advice in the chat. If you can announce yourself before you speak, it would just probably be helpful for everybody. But I forgot to announce that earlier. Commissioner Stignani, do you have something?
Well, I just want to draw people's attention to Attorney Andrea Naff's commentary. So if we vote before without editing, all the edits should be proofing only, not substantive. And I'd like to invite Attorney Naff to help the lay people understand what's not substantive.
Hi there. Thank you for your question, Commissioner Stignani. If you want to do things like delete spaces, change capitals, add commas, and so forth, I think that would be reasonable changes to be made after the fact. But changing any of the meaning of the resolution would be inappropriate after the commission has already voted on it. All of the substance should be in front of the group before they decide whether or not to adopt it as their own.
Thank you.
So actually, I want to clarify. Amy, do you have any other amended edits that are beyond proofing?
I don't have any substantive amendments. No, it's just the proofreading sort of thing. And I put something in the chat, really minor, removing the stray parenthesis in the first line.
So what we are voting on will not have any substantive changes. It's interesting, Yanni, question.
Sounds like that's what Commissioner Bergquist to confirm for us, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm not proposing any substantive changes, just a proofread, that's all.
Yeah. I did just actually make that per edit, so thank you for that. But Diana, if you want to call the clerk to call the roll, that'd be great.
Sure, May.
Yes, thank you.
I have my hand raised too.
Oh, shoot, I'm sorry. Oh, your circle wasn't showing. Yes, Commissioner.
Commissioner Herkman, on where it says, whereas 3 children, 10 and under, have been killed, in reference to the 3 children in North Minneapolis, LaDavian is still fighting for his life in the hospital. So I think that would be important and substantive to change that, whether we say 3 children have been shot and 2 have been killed. But I think especially with sensitivity to the families, we would need to amend that line.
Okay, with that edit, Commissioner Herkman, could you make those edits? And along with Commissioner Bergquist, Commissioner Herkman, if you could take into account Commissioner Bergquist edits and your edits and resubmit it for next time that we meet, because I want to be sensitive of our time. Can you do that, Commissioner Herkman?
I can. That would change the date as well, that we wanted it to be the first Friday, July 20th.
We can push it back to August.
Okay.
And then Commissioner Kobia, you have a question?
Yeah, I actually have 3. One was it says, whereas this the idea. I think we wanted to say, whereas this idea. I don't know if that's still in everybody's version.
Okay.
That's a minor change. The one I wanted to ask if you had like a reference for just was the whereas with the colon, the illegal gun mark in Minneapolis is readily supplied by local Minnesota straw buyers. Do you have like something that, or I'm just wondering where that came from?
This is Commissioner Rance. There was a recent article in the Star and Tribune with a case that that just came up in regards to straw buying here in the state of Minnesota. It was
okay, great.
Significant.
Great. And then just as a sort of another technical matter, the next wherein clause sort of looks like a resolution rather than a wherein or whereas clause. So I would say just remove the last from the we request the first Friday, because we're already requesting that down below.
Okay.
So something like, whereas we seek to honor these innocent children, the other community members whose lives have been cut short, and the countless survivors, and just delete the last part, since that's the resolution, not the whereas.
Okay, can you make those edits and then send it to Herkman, or can we do this like on a phone call or make an appointment together so we can make these edits, and then next time we meet in August, this will be ready to discuss. Can you do that, Commissioner Kobia and Commissioner Herkman?
Of course.
Okay, thank you. Herkman, I see your hand is up, and Commissioner Kobia, I see your hand is up. I hope I resolved those questions, or no?
Yes.
Okay. And Commissioner Lord, I see you have your hand up as well.
I did just want to make everyone aware that the National Night Out is Tuesday, August 3rd. Not that that would necessarily change if you did first Friday in August, but I just wanted to make you aware that there's another major event, kind of a, related event on Tuesday, August 3rd, I believe it is this year.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we'll table this discussion. Commissioner Kobia, Commissioner Herkman, thank you for volunteering to help me some more.
Commissioner Devenish, I have a question really quick.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Commissioner Herkman, as far as the comment that you made regarding, let's see, 3 children and under have been killed. What is your preferred language? Because I was just making the updates and I missed that, and I want to share it with the commission so we can approve this right now. But I want to confirm the language. What I put was 3 children, 10 and under have been victims of gunfire. But I'm wondering, because I already did the edits because I had already pulled it up, so it was easy. I'm wondering if that's okay if we just make this last change and approve this letter, because it is as Commissioner Devenish and I have spoken a few times, this is a major issue that our city is facing right now, and we want to be able to take a stance and push forward and do something about it, and make that statement. So I respect that, and so I'm wondering if we can.
Yeah, I'm fine with the change you made. I just think then 3 did not die. So just, I think maybe we just say comma with 2 deaths, or two that have, I guess, without thinking about, I have a condition. Let me see if I can, what I have here. Just the recognition that they're not all in the same situation. I think to the parents, it would be important as we talk about their children to honor where they're at. And so with all I wanted to get across was that 2 have passed away, and 1 is fighting for their life right now. Doesn't have to be that narrative.
Absolutely. Okay. Would you like me to share this really quick?
Yes, but also Commissioner Lord has her hand up. Commissioner Lord?
Oh, shoot, I can't share it.
Sorry, I failed to take it down before.
Okay. Any other questions while we're editing?
This is Commissioner Berquist. I had suggested in the chat, there are just 2 minor edits, but they are substantive. The 3rd paragraph and the 2nd to last paragraph make use of the term citizens. And I think as a Civil Rights Commission, we want to be as inclusive as possible in our language. And there's no prohibition on non-citizens possessing firearms. And of course, we would want to encourage not only citizens, but non-citizens to take action in the 2nd to last paragraph. So we could change the word citizens to people in both paragraphs to make it more inclusive.
That's a good point.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So I actually can't share my screen because I have to give permission, and in order to do that, I have to leave the meeting. But I did make that change. I took out the whereas comment that was regarding the Stop the Gun Violence Day that was the resolution. So I took that line out. I think that was Commissioner Kobia's comment. And then whereas 3 children, 10 and under, have been victims of gunfire, 1 of which is still fighting for their life. in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I added that part. I don't know if that sounds okay.
One question from Commissioner Stignati. Can Kayla share?
I don't think she can share my screen.
She says if I can get a copy. So can
Yeah,
you?
Yes,
but
you have
I'm
to like
making a live edit right now.
email it to me or something, and then I could.
Right, but I'm editing it right now, so
Makes sense.
yeah, it would be back and forth then.
And Commissioner Stignani, when we get to a point where we're ready, if we want to try to push this through, we should try to get, the substance, as Commissioner Berquist has identified, get those changes, get those up on screen so we can see what we're voting towards.
Okay, so I am going to put those changes in the chat. My apologies that I didn't think to do that. We've done that in the past. So here is okay. Hold on one second. Okay, I just changed the wording, but somebody's probably gonna have to edit that because it didn't make sense to have the Minneapolis at the end the way that it was worded. So, but that's I just copied that last sentence, but it probably doesn't sound right where it says children in Minneapolis since April 10th.
And could you copy just the rest of the, substantive changes?
Yep, I'm grabbing the other one.
Thank you.
The other one is just a deletion though. A deletion of, I deleted it, so I need to find what the deletion was. And last, Commissioner Copia, can you remind me what line that was? Or, never mind. I will find it.
It was deletion of we request the first Friday in July be designated Stop the Gun Violence Day.
Yep, and so I took that out because that's what this ultimately results in. Yes, right? That was the substantive.
Yes, but now we need a verb in that whereas. So I just added we seek to. Or it is important, just some kind of verb there.
In which line?
And the one to help honor these innocent children.
Okay. And you are suggesting?
You could say that like honor is needed or recognition is needed to honor, make it sound more like the rest of it.
Okay, so this is correct. Is that okay? I put it in the chat. Recognition is needed to help honor these innocent children, the other community members whose lives have been cut short. Okay, perfect. Did everyone get a good grasp on those changes so we can approve that? Or not approve, vote on it, sorry. Okay. Did we already call the motion? Is the motion already ahead of us? Are we just waiting on the?
Yes.
Okay. We'll have Diana, if you can call the roll, please.
Commissioner May,
Yes.
Commissioner Crowder,
Yes.
Devenish,
Yes.
Swift,
Yes.
Folk,
Yes.
Stignani,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Fine,
Yes.
Gold,
Yes.
Grants,
Yes.
Shepherd,
Yes.
Lord,
Yes.
Kirkman,
Yeah.
Hartz,
Yes.
Fee,
Yes.
Farrar,
Yes.
Cobia,
Yes.
Bergquist.
Yes.
So you have 18 yeses. That's unanimous.
Oh, great. Thank you. That motion passes and the resolution will be adopted with the amended changes that we've made. Let's see. Item 7 on the agenda is a report on the proposal and confirmation of community members for their work in diversity, which will be given by Commissioner Devenish. I will now invite the Commissioner Devenish to give that report.
Well, thank you. The community engagement team and I came up with the idea of community awards. So we voted on 9. We provided that and is uploaded in the agenda, giving some examples of the work that has been done in our community. We just want to award these people with certificates. Chair Gold, could you also give some feedback into that, please?
Yeah, I think we also were hoping to provide $25 gift certificates if that was something, we could vote on tonight to those 9 specifically. And then we also talked about when moving forward, hands are up. Go ahead. Everyone wants to go first.
Commissioner Davis?
Oh.
Is that Davis?
Oh, I think we have Kayla and Andrea.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just saw the initials. I apologize.
No worries. This is Kayla from the department. I think I'm bringing up the same issue that Andrea is bringing up, so I will pass it over to her.
Hi there, Chair May and Commissioners. I apologize for interrupting. I could have waited to raise my hand. I didn't mean to interrupt the Commissioners. With regard to the idea of presenting certificates, that is, I think that sounds like a great idea. When we look at gift cards, I have some concerns about whether that will survive scrutiny with our state auditor. And so I would request and ask that you delay any gift card decisions at least until next month to allow us to analyze whether that's going to be possible. You could vote on certificates today, however, because that doesn't raise the same concerns as monetary gifts to members of the community does.
Question, can we use some of our funds to buy frames for the certificates?
As long as it's de minimis, yes. I wouldn't say we should custom frame, certificates with, expensive frames, but yes, frames of a nominal value would be fine.
Yeah, thank you. I see Commissioner Farrar, you have your hand up, sir.
Thank you very much. I think that if we're going to be presenting people with something from the Commission, we should have like an open and transparent process by which people's names get onto this list, and particularly if we're going to do this for the future. What was the process and the criteria by which these ones were selected, and how could we go about nominating other people for the same thing in the future?
Yes, sir. We just came together, recognize people. I think mostly a lot of these people are volunteers at the George Floyd Square. For example, Eliza Wesley, gatekeeper. And there's some, if you click on those links, it tells you some background about these individuals. Some of them don't get paid. Some of them are nonprofit, working day in tirelessly. In fact, the gatekeeper, Eliza, she's been on the news several times because she's there every day working hard for the community. Michael Smith, Community Needs Community, he's doing the same thing. He's feeding people at George Floyd Square was for free, nonprofit, not making much money, but just doing it for the betterment of our community. And recognizing those people during this tumultuous time who have worked tirelessly and asked for nothing in return, just to do basically the right thing. And I think that embodies what the Civil Rights Department stands for, is to form inclusiveness, equity, and just providing services to the community. So I hope that answers your question. Chair Gold, would you like to add to that? Or
yeah, really quick, because I see other hands up, but I just wanted to say, since our role on the subcommittee of community engagement and research, we have access to a lot of community leaders and people who are organizing, and so that's kind of how their names came up. And at any time, if any commissioners on the body want to email me or email Cindy Devenish or attend a subcommittee meeting and nominate somebody, that's kind of our process on how we tend to go about this in the future, if that works for everybody else, because nobody should be excluded from adding a name to that list. If you know someone who's doing outstanding work and volunteer work and community organizing. I see Commissioner, go ahead.
I just want to say, in recognizing our Vice Chair, Commissioner Folk.
Oh, yes, just to add, also, I believe we had voted on this as a commission prior, that as a subcommittee, the community engagement team would come up with the nominees and we would provide the information regarding the nominees, which we have in the agenda. And so as chair of the subcommittee, Gold has said, the goal is to open this up and have open nominations that the commission could nominate others that they know of that are serving the community and kind of really putting and advancing the city, especially in areas of civil rights, racial equity, and et cetera. And so I think if we want to discuss maybe setting up a more formal process, that's definitely something we can map out as a subcommittee and maybe bring back to the commission as a whole. I think just with these 9, we did already have the I think approved process with this commission that we would come up with these as a subcommittee.
I hope that answers your question.
And if I may, since you said, does that answer my question? I don't think it does, actually. I'm not disputing these are worthy individuals. I, in fact, think these are good people. I think they should get a certificate. Happy with that. But I just heard a couple of different criteria by which they made it to the list. And I think that we should probably formalize those criteria and the process. If they have to be volunteers, if they have to be recognized for community service, or what other standards you want to put in place, I think we should do that in a transparent way, so that for the future, everyone knows who they could nominate to the committee for inclusion on the list.
But why do you feel like it needs to be formalized? Why can't it just be people who feel they're doing outstanding work in the community,
because
regardless of paid or regardless of volunteer? It's more of a recognition.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you then. I think it should be formalized because it's inappropriate, in my opinion, that a small group of people select people without the wider group knowing what the criteria is. I just feel that's the essence of transparency and openness. And if in fact we want to devolve this to the committee without requiring what their criteria are, I'm happy with that too, but I wouldn't vote for that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bergquist, you have your hand up.
Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to provide a little context, and this predates my time on the commission because I joined the commission, I think, in 2013, and maybe Commissioner Fine was on the commission in 2012. I'm not sure. But in 2012, the commission created a new award called the Martin Luther King Jr. Award and awarded it. And I think that's the only time that award has been given. in 2013, like months later, the person who received that award began a campaign for public office. And I think I think one of the commissioners was involved with that person's campaign. And there were some sensitivities that giving this award seemed kind of like an endorsement of that person's campaign for office. And that person to this day lists that award on his public website and all of that. This person happens to be the mayor of Minneapolis. So this was like before he was elected to any public office. I just provide that as a bit of context, and I think it's great to have more than one person getting this award, because that would sort of maybe not make it seem quite as much of an endorsement. And I just bring this up as a note of caution that we don't want to be seen as a political body, and we don't want our awards to be politicized, which seems to me kind of what happened in 2013 when Jacob Fry was running for city council, and it's still part of sort of his, it's on his website. It's something he still publicizes to this day, that he received that award from this commission. So I see Andrea has raised her hand, and maybe she has more context about this as well, because as I said, this was before I was on the commission, and things have changed.
I'm sorry, Ms. Neff, before you chime in, I just want to say that we got support from the Civil Rights Department saying that they think it's a good idea and that they support the idea. So I just want to add that in. Ms. Neef, could you please chime in? I see your hand is raised.
I'd be happy to. I don't mean to jump over anyone else who is already in queue, however. But I'll be quite brief then. I do appreciate Commissioner Bergquist raising the question of whether there could be a political aspect to this. I was not supporting the commission in 2012 and was not aware of that story, but I would note that the commission is a non-political body, and it is required to continue being non-political, and by under our ethics code, simply cannot be involved in politics. So if any of these nominees, and I know this was not the intention of anyone in compiling this list, but if any of them is currently or has made public an intention to run for office this November, they should not receive this award. That would raise some concerns about the ethics code. And again, I recognize that I'm sure no one had any intention of doing that. And I do thank Commissioner Bergquist just for raising that caution.
Yeah, and to add on, this is Commissioner Folk, and I don't know if we got the language in there, but I think when we create the certificate and actually like have the language on the certificate, I know as a subcommittee we did discuss, I believe Commissioner Herkman brought up the point of just being very clear that this is an endorsement for their, not endorsement, sorry, this is in recognition of their involvement in the community, and making it clear it is not an endorsement for we can make it clear that it's not endorsement for like anything political. If they were to have a political career in the future, I don't think anyone on the list currently is running for politics, but if it is a concern in the future, we can say this is not like a political endorsement of any sort. We're a non-political politically affiliated commission, as well as we just wanted to make clear that it was for their work and support in the community, and not necessarily them as a person and an individual, because we know sometimes individuals could maybe engage in something in their personal life that is not reflection of our recognition, and it's really about their work in the community and not about them as an individual as well. So just wanted to bring that. We have had that discussion in the subcommittee.
Commissioner Lord, is that your hand up?
Yeah, I guess I had two questions. One, does this have a name, I guess, or is it just, the Minneapolis Commission on Civil Rights is recognizing you? And second, second question is, I appreciate what was said about recognizing certain activities, and it's some of the individuals in the list sent had some clear activities listed in their kind of their blurbs, if you will, but others didn't. So we might just need to be really clear about what it is we're recognizing, and maybe need more clarity for each of the individuals on what the recognition is for.
Thank you, Commissioner Lord. And just a reminder that as commissioners, we can all attend each other's subcommittees and provide insight. So if anybody would like to attend or draft any ideas, they can send it to Chair Gold or Vice Chair Folk if they have any ideas.
Commissioner Devonish. Oh, sorry. I was just going to confirm the next meeting is tomorrow evening, correct?
That's right. Yep, 6 o'clock.
And Commissioner May, if I could make a comment, this is Kayla from the department.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify that we don't necessarily take a position one way or the other as the department on this motion that's before us. It's up to the commission. We would, however, encourage that if such awards are going to be given, and especially moving into the future, a process that could be replicated and have clear criteria. So that would be the department's position on the matter.
Thank you. And Commissioner Lord, your hand is still up. Did you have another question or comment?
Doesn't look like.
Oh, no. Okay. So
Let's see. I'm wondering what motion we want to present, because I know we've spoken about a motion to approve these nominees and a motion to approve a process. But I would ask that anybody that does have suggestions for the process, like Commissioner Devonish did suggest, the meeting is open to all of the commissioners, and the next meeting is tomorrow evening. Commissioner Devonish or Commissioner Chair Gold, how would you like to proceed?
I think we should just call a motion to vote on these 9. And then if folks on the commission want to talk about a process for the future, future nominees, they can attend the meeting tomorrow. We meet every 2 weeks on Tuesday, or they can email myself or Vice Chair Folk. So I would call a motion to hand out certificates with a very cheap frame to the 9 nominees who have shown outstanding work in the community.
Do we have a second?
This is Commissioner
Yes,
Devonish. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. Commissioner Davis, I second that.
Thanks, Commissioner Davis. Can we have the clerk call the roll, please?
Commissioner May,
Yes.
Commissioner Crowder, Devonish,
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Swift,
Yes.
Folk,
Yes, sorry. Yes.
Stignani,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Fine,
Yes.
Gold,
Yes.
Rance,
Yes.
Shepherd,
Yes.
Lord,
Yes.
Erkman,
Yes.
Hartz,
Yes.
Farrar,
No.
Cobia,
Yes.
Bergquist.
Yes.
You have 16 yeses and 1 no.
Thank you. That motion passes, and we are recognizing these 9 outstanding community members for their work in advocating for civil rights and their work within our community. I believe, and sorry, Commissioner Copia, I believe, oh yeah, Commissioner Gold made that motion.
Can I say one thing? I'm so sorry. I know we passed this and I know it's running late. I just quickly wanted just to reiterate, we are on the community engagement subcommittee, and we're trying to come up with ideas to get out there and to let people know that we exist. And so this was one of the ideas. And so when we present the awards to people, we're going to be taking pictures, we're going to be getting videos, we're going to add them to the social media as a part of the subcommittee to talk about civil rights in Minneapolis and advance, all the things we talk about here. So that's it.
Thank you for that. The next order of business is the acceptance of public comments. I will open the floor and invite comments from the community. Each speaker is allowed to speak for 2 minutes. And with that, are there any community members on the line who wish to address the commission? Okay. Seeing none.
I have a question, Commissioner May. When they're on the phone, do they have to press like pound something to unmute when they're on the phone?
Does anybody have experience with that? I would know. Sometimes I've seen you have to press 6, but I think that's Zoom.
I just hit the button for the speaker to take off mute on my phone anyway.
Okay, so just the mute, same mute and unmute. Okay.
With the microphone.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis.
I don't know this for sure, but I think *6 is what I've heard.
Yeah, I'm like, that's familiar.
So if anyone wants to try that, who would like to speak, go ahead.
It does look like our phone callers are not on the line anymore. Or is it just me seeing that? Or does anyone else see anybody in the participants?
You are correct. Yep.
No, I'm not. Phone numbers. I didn't even know. There were so many earlier. We had a good good audience for our speaker. Well, with that, we will continue on to the final item, which is report outs from our standing committees and task forces. So if community engagement and research has a update.
This is Commissioner Gold. Our update is we attended a fabulous Juneteenth event put on by fellow commissioner and star of the full body commission tonight, Commissioner Devenish. This Saturday, Juneteenth event, she knocked it out of the park. There was health providers there was music, there was food, there was community. Vice Chair Folk and I attended. And we're going to be meeting tomorrow. And we're just going to continue on the path of brainstorming more task force, how to get more community engagement, and more, I guess, active on our social media. And the motion that passed tonight about the African American Family Preservation Act, the gun violence proclamation, and the 9 nominees is going to help us do that. So that is my update. If Vice Chair Folk wants to add anything, or Commissioner Devenish, or Commissioner Herkman, or Commissioner Davis, feel free.
I just want to thank everybody for their help on the gun violence proclamation, the African American Family Preservation Act, and the awards. Thank you for your support.
Okay. Next, we have the Standards and Procedures Committee.
Yeah, this is Chair Commissioner Fine, and we have nothing to report. We are going to be meeting in July.
Thank you. And then we have Workforce and Contract Compliance Subcommittee.
Oh boy, do we have a lot of things to tell you about that are really exciting. First of all, this is Commissioner Copia, and I will stop talking almost immediately because we elected Commissioner Rance as the new chair of our subcommittee and Commissioner Stignani as the new vice chair. Commissioner Rance, I leave it to you. I'm happy to reiterate anything. I have 3 pages of notes, 4 pages of notes, but let me know if you want me to talk. Otherwise, I'll leave it to you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Cobia. I'll take on a very high level. We had an election, and so I was voted as the chair, and Commissioner Signani as the vice chair. And we'll be meeting soon to talk about some of our goals and initiatives, along with prior conversation with Chair Cobia. And we had a presentation from the city of Minneapolis with 3 of their employees. They're talking about procurement, and they led us through the process for some of the target market programs that are available with the city of Minneapolis. And after they went through that program, and we discussed how they work, and there were some requests for some data analytics and some follow-up materials. And so those 3 gentlemen are in the process of gathering that information and providing that. So hopefully we'll have more to report back on our next meeting in regards to next steps on how that information is going to be utilized, and we can then develop a strategy for contract compliance and just the overall awareness of the different programs and opportunities that are available through the city of Minneapolis for protected class folks. And that's my report.
Thank you and congratulations. Excited to continue on this work, and I think you'll lead that role perfectly.
Thank you.
Let's see. Okay. And nothing else from the workforce and contract. So, and Vice Chair Shoemake is not here tonight, so I will give an update. And I want to thank everyone that's participated in the discussion tonight, or in the meeting tonight, but furthermore, the discussions that we've had, it just really solidifies like the need that I see for equity, anti-racism, and the work that we're doing within the commission, within our systems where we serve the residents of Minneapolis. And with that, next meeting, we will have a brief presentation from Cassidy Gardner with the city in regards to some historical trauma, or the presentation will be more about where we're kind of like a starting shared understanding conversation, but that will be followed up with a training from Cassidy, where we'll have the commission will be attending a training led by Cassidy, who's with the city of Minneapolis, like I said. So I'm really excited about that next meeting, and look forward to more work that we can do, and really building a culture of working towards civil rights, anti-discrimination, but also equity, racial equity, and anti-racism. And then we have Kayla has an update as well.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I just have a very brief couple things that I wanted to say. One was I just want to thank Commissioner Devenish for inviting the department to be involved in Juneteenth. 2 of my staff were there, John and Matthew, and I talked to both of them today, and they had a great time and thought it was definitely a great event, and thought that they, really connected with people and were able to share the work of the department and hopefully provide some resources and tools to folks. So thanks so much for that invitation, and we're glad to do it. And I look forward to more partnering on things like that in the future, especially as we get more into going out to outreach things in a, somewhat post-COVID situation. So happy about that. I also wanted to check in on review panel cases, especially because Vice Chair Shoemake isn't here, and I know she usually covers that. So just a reminder to make sure to sign your conflict of interest forms for cases that you're assigned to, and then to get those June cases done. I know those conflict of interest forms came out a little bit later this time around, so sorry about that. But just make sure to keep an eye on those, and then get those cases scheduled for review. Feel free to reach out to me or Matthew if any questions arise in regards to that. And then the last update that I was going to provide was just I do hope that we can continue down the road of partnering on outreach stuff. And in that vein, I'll work with Chair May to schedule some sort of training, hopefully within the next month or so, to assist commissioners who are interested in learning more about like the complaint filing process and how to help folks out in the community potentially file complaints. You know, if you're at outreach events or other circumstances that might come up where someone has an issue that potentially could become a discrimination charge. So I will be putting together a training for commissioners who are interested, so keep an eye out for that. But other than that, thank you for your work as always, and happy to continue working together.
I have a question for you, Ms. Keela. Can you and I talk about the logistics and how these people are going to get their awards certificates?
Absolutely. Yep, I'm happy to connect, you know, whenever it works for you sometime soon to figure that out.
And one more question with that. Is the city open to let people in or no? City of Minneapolis?
Do you mean like to do something in person?
Yes.
So as of now, I did check with the clerk's office about this a couple times because a couple different commissioners have asked about that. So as of now, all the boards and commissions need to continue functioning remotely, and that's because of the state of emergency that's in place. We're not supposed to be having commissions meet in person yet. I do think that will change relatively soon. So if you wanted to do something in person, I think that probably would be available in the next couple of months. I'm not exactly sure what the timeline looks like, but up until that kind of becomes the official policy of the city, it won't be possible to do anything in person.
Okay, because I was just thinking about the award presentation, what that would look like.
And I'm happy to keep you posted, and because it'll have implications not only with that, but with the commission as a whole. I will definitely keep you posted as we start hearing more about when we might be returning to in person and what that would look like.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, everybody, for the updates. With that, we've concluded all items on our agenda for this meeting. And I will see everyone back here in a month for the July 19th meeting, regular meeting. Seeing no further updates to come before us, and without objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night. If the executive the executive team can just stay on so we can schedule a date to do some agenda setting, that'd be great.